Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to. Lots to talk about. What a weekend it was. Big game. Am I allowed to say Super Bowl after the Super Bowl? Are you allowed to say it then, or is it ever? Can you never say the words ever? Or is it just in the run-up to? Anyway, big weekend. Did not see the big trucker convoy through to shut down the Super Bowl. Good thing, I guess. Didn't see it rolling into every city across the country as the Ricky Schroeder of Silver Spoons and the Aqua Buddha senator from Kentucky, Rand Paul, had wanted, and virtually all of radical, crazy right-wing talk radio. Didn't see it. But interesting thing did happen over the weekend, though, with the big trucking rally. Interesting that once you see on the Ambassador Bridge and in other places where they got the trucks out of there, they kind of pulled back the curtain that there weren't actual many people. There were some. There was a good number. But it wasn't, I was getting reports of 250,000 people and there are a gazillion trucks and no, it was like 1,000 trucks, is what they're saying, is what some of the reports that I'm getting. And, I look at this and we're gonna examine this over the next couple of weeks and months, I'm certain. Because for me, part of the question is, what was it about? I know at the beginning they had said that, some people were upset about the vaccine mandate, which that was kind of the spark. And then a bunch of right-wing money, just flew into it. And a bunch of organizing and a bunch of stuff went into it. Everybody then who had a grievance kind of joined on. And the message got muddled. I know there were signs, people bought the T-shirts, but there wasn't really a cohesive message. There was a lot of noise. A lot of people throwing a temper tantrum in public. Yes, there was that. As you get with these things sometimes, but there was no message. Now, like I said from the beginning, almost immediately it was taken over by right-wing hate groups. They showed the Confederate flag. It's interesting. If it's not about hate, this is the part that gets me. If it's not viewed globally as a symbol for hate, right there with the Nazi flag, why are they flying it in Canada? I mean, really, let that sink in for a second. The hate mongers and the white supremacists and the Nazis, they're flying the Confederate flag right there. But here's the thing. I know they bought the signs. They bought their Confederate flag along. But outside of people being angry, what was the message? Now, I argue what happened. And look, I'm a big supporter of people being able to protest. I'm a big supporter of people having the right to protest their grievances to their government, which people did. You don't have the right to shut everything down. Now, for me, this is an interesting moment because we have Rand Paul, we've got the Ricky Schroeder, we've got a bunch of right-wing mouthpieces and talking heads saying, no, this is what we want. We want people to be able to take their trucks and shut things down. Because look, I've said for years, the American truckers should be turning their trucks sideways on the highway. But it should be over wages, hours, conditions. It should be over the fact that for years they've been getting cheated out of wages. They've been abused by horrible dispatchers. And if you want to be a long-haul truck driver, don't get married. Because you will be divorced before you know it. Because if you're not home keeping your side of the bed warm, somebody will. And it always happens. There are very few exceptions. These are family-killing jobs. And, if you really wanted to be angry and you really wanted to protest, that would be it. That would be the protest. But we don't have that. What we have is this feigned outrage that the right-wing hate machine has really, really pumped up. And look, I think the curtain's pulled back on our media. They just want chaos. They just want, where there's upset people. That sells. People then pay attention. Now, you could argue that the reason it grew so large is because the police in Ottawa have been soft. They were soft on other protests, so they're soft on this. They didn't want to be called hypocritical. They were worried that, someone might get upset. And they allowed it to turn into what it is. You have the right to protest. But again, as a truck driver, and this is where I go back to this, in this country anyway, you can't park in the left-hand lane. You can't stop on a highway. You can't block any traffic without being cited. You can't use your vehicle to block things without being cited. And I don't know that Canada did any of this stuff. It's going to be interesting to see in the coming days, weeks, and months where they do go. And if it happens here, what will happen? American truck drivers, interestingly enough, have been sufficiently, I think, put into place in a lot of areas because they're all independents. They're all their own boss. If those wheels aren't moving, they could lose the truck. They're all on the treadmill. And at what point do you financially break them? I will be interested to see if any of the right-wing talkosphere gets anyone to do what they want. It will be interesting to see, at the least, what happens in this. Now, I go back to, I started this program Labor Day 2005. The idea being right-wing talk radio knows its audience. And there's a pivot happening. There's a pivot happening right before our very eyes, in that the right-wing money is going into being the part to creating a party of working class grievance. If you look at the money that went to this freedom convoy, very little of it was actually Canadian money. In fact, a group hacked into a Christian crowdfunding site that raised about almost $9 million. And they found, of the 92,000 donors, 56% of them from the U.S., only 29 from Canada, and thousands from Ireland, the UK, Australia, Ireland, all over the place. Because there's a right-wing rise of insanity going on before our very eyes. And this is where we're in this strange moment. But where the right wing knows their audience. They know that truckers listen to them day and night. And like I said, I started this back in 2005 because all of my truck driver buddies were listening to all of that insanity. And I was saying, look, there's got to be something else. There's got to be some balance, some alternative to the insanity that's being spewed at them at every turn. And for years, I've been saying at some point the Republican Party turns away from being the hateful party against workers to one that actually, takes on the grievances and moves forward. And we're starting to see it. We're seeing it in Ted Cruz. We're seeing it in Marco Rubio. We're seeing some of the rhetoric. And I've been going, why is that? Why now are we starting to see this moving in that direction? And the reason, billionaire money. Evidently, according to the New York Times today, Peter Thiel wants to be the big Republican kingmaker. He wants to be the person who moves the agenda. And what they wrote is he's currently driven by a worldview that the establishment and globalization have failed, that current immigration policy pillages the middle class, and that the country must dismantle federal institutions, must destroy the whole thing. Drain the swamp, tear it down. I'm angry. That argument plays. And I've been saying for years, eventually the GOP is going to pivot and try and grab that mantle. And we're seeing it happen right now. It's an interesting moment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, going to talk a little bit more about this, some of the Manchin stuff, Lots to get to. Right back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Joe Manchin back in the news. And why not? Why wouldn't Joe Manchin be front and center and another way to booger up the rest of the potential year? But he has said that he will not vote for a Supreme Court justice before the midterm elections. This is what he said originally. Not going to do it before the midterms. He's going to wait until the country decides who's going to be the Senate in 2023. Then started doing the backpedal. Now he's saying, I meant president. So I guess in 2024, there will be no Supreme Court justice. If someone dies, they're just going to have to wait till 25. We don't have a functional court. So he has bought hook, line, and sinker the Mitch McConnell nonsense. Anyway, here, share some thoughts on the Manchin and all of the things going on. I've asked our good friend Rich Ojeda to come talk with us. Rich is the national spokesperson for No Dem Left Behind. Rich, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, I appreciate it, Rick. You know, I always enjoy being on your show.
I love having you. What do you think of this Manchin thing? Are you surprised by this?
Manchin is an absolute sold-out bootlicker, is what he is. You know, he doesn't care about anybody but himself. And, you know, Manchin has got a taste of the Republican money, the corporate money, and he likes it. And we can expect that for the rest of time, you know, when it comes to Joe Manchin.
Yeah, over the weekend, did you happen to check out the Super Bowl and the big trucker rally that didn't happen?
Well, I mean, I know that they were wanting, you know, Rand Paul was talking about it, but I didn't watch. I don't really get into that, and we just moved to North Carolina, and we have been working our tails off, so we really haven't had much time for any of that.
Well, good on you for moving, but the reason I bring that up is because, well, what happened? What's happening in Canada? What happened? Helping to slow down our supply chain and block the bridge there is being cheerleaded by the Rand Pauls of the world and the right-wing blather machine, because they want to see that kind of chaos here. They want to see us. They want to see us fail, and they want to make that happen.
The Republicans want to see nothing but chaos so that the Republicans can try to act like elect us and we'll solve your problems. The bad part about it is that we know that they have tapped into the poorly educated, and we have so many people out there that think that they're poor Republicans, which is an oxymoron. But nonetheless, they will vote. So that's why it's very important in 2022 and 2024. The 81 million show back up, and a lot more.
Yeah, and a lot more. Now, evidently Wednesday, I guess the Ukrainian president is saying Wednesday is the day that they're expecting Russia to invade. I'm curious your thoughts on if that Wednesday will happen, and what do you think our response should be?
Well, you know, we are already putting boots on the ground in certain areas, Poland, Ukraine, Russia does not want Ukraine to become a NATO force. But at the end of the day, I think that Vladimir Putin is realizing that the people in Russia struggle. They struggle greatly, and he's kind of trying to explain to them about going back to the good old days when Russia controlled half of Europe. But I will tell you that I would worry about the sanctions that he's going to be hit with. And I believe that Joe Biden and quite a few others are going to be willing to do that. I think that this is a play from Putin because he really doesn't have any other thing he can do. I mean, once again, the country struggles, and he's going to push them to this point. But I will tell you that the sanctions that we will hit him with will be absolutely brutal. And the people that are going to feel it the most are going to be the citizens of Russia.
Yeah, but what I'm being told is no, Rick, you've got it wrong. We're going after the oligarchs. These are targeted, strategic sanctions. We're only going after the oligarchs.
Well, I mean, I guess that's always the possibility, but
that's what I'm being told. I mean, is it true or is it not? That's where I'm. This is what we're being told.
No, I'm going to tell you right now. If they go, we're going to hit them with sanctions. We literally could shut their money, completely off. We could turn their money into nothing but worthless paper. And I believe that that's the best route to go. What I hope is we don't find ourselves, throwing metal at each other. I can assure you right now that you've got Halliburton, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and the rest of those jackaloons right now that are absolutely just salivating because they're hoping that, we can get right back into another war that's going to keep them, filthy, filthy rich. And at the end of the day, nobody wins except them.
Yeah, sadly, you're absolutely right on that. And anybody who thinks different should go back and read Smedley Butler's "War is a Racket." That pamphlet is as true true today as it was then, and I would argue even more so today. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Rich Ojeda. Rich is national spokesperson for No Dem Left Behind. Their organization reaches out into rural areas and helps Democrats run for office in places, where the fight needs to be had. Good work that you're doing there. If you're just tuning in, make sure you grab the podcast so you never miss a minute. You can do that at thericksmithshow.com. Rich, I'm in this weird spot where there's just so much to get to. I'm concerned about what's going on over in Ukraine. I'm concerned about what's possibly going to happen here as you've got the chaos merchants saying, hey, let's shut cities down. Let's get truck drivers for no reason, because there's no reason they can think of other than that they're angry, to shut cities down, to shut events down, because they can. I'm kind of in a weird moment.
Well, look, I mean, if you want to play those games, if you want to participate in that, then you can lose your job. And there'll be plenty of openings for people out there that want to try a new occupation of being a trucker.
Yeah, but here's the thing that gets me. The thing that's frustrating to me is that there's even a consideration of doing this for no reason when truck drivers really do have a reason to turn the truck sideways, and that's better wages, hours, conditions. There's no talk, and you would never hear a Republican or any of these blathering rage heads come out and say, hey, yeah, truck drivers, you should be getting better wages, hours, and conditions, and we'd support you if you went on strike. No, you never hear that. When was the last time you heard a Republican say, I'm going to support a striking worker? I can't remember.
The Republicans don't care nothing about anything like that. The Republicans only care about the top 1%. But, they've convinced a lot of these people to participate in this garbage. We know that the Republican Party and organizations like Fox News and Newsmax and OAN and groups like that are doing nothing but trying to push people towards that direction because they need chaos. They need chaos. I'll tell you, I believe that Joe Biden is hitting home runs out of the park constantly. The Democrats just doesn't know how to tell their success stories. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm telling you, I think a lot of people are waking up. But the Republicans, they want chaos because they know that that's the only thing that they can run on.
So all I heard all weekend from conservative emailers and right-wing outlets was how The John Durham report is out, and it was all Hillary. All of the stuff about Russia is made up. It's all there's all of this mounting evidence, but we can't hold anybody accountable because the statute of limitations ran out. And I wondered why on Friday that they would dump that, other than that would be the narrative for the weekend and something to enrage the already enraged. I was wondering about that until I saw today's story about Trump and the accounting firm, this Mazars USA, who has just now dumped him, saying that they can no longer stand behind the statements that they prepared for him because they don't believe anything that he gave them was accurate. I now see the connection of how one was dumped to create a narrative, so maybe we would miss this.
Well, I'll tell you, when it comes to Donald Trump, nothing surprises me. I'm sitting here every single day just waiting and waiting for Merrick Garland to do something. And I'll be honest with you, I'm really starting to lose faith. You know, when you have people like Glenn Kirshner that have come out and said how important it is for him to act now and nothing's happening. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm starting to feel like, you know, there are people in this country that are absolutely above the law. We know that for sure now that we know that, you know, people in Congress are allowed to use insider trading, which all of them do to, you know, pad their pockets. But I'll tell you, it's really starting to look like we have a very, very corrupt government. Well, we know we had one under the Trump administration, but I really wish that someone would step up to the plate and try to save our democracy versus just watching it wash down the drain.
Yeah, see, I see it in a couple of different ways. I see it corrupt on one side, but I also see not willing to overturn precedent in the past. We've never gone after and locked up presidents. We've never gone after them for their crimes and held them really accountable. But we've also never had a criminal. We've never had a criminal like Donald Trump. I mean, look at now we know that there are massive, you know, breaks in where they're missing phone calls and 15 boxes of things taken down to Mar-a-Lago. You know, as a person who held a top secret security clearance, you know, anything that was top secret was kept in a skiff in an area that you had to have a certain clearance to even have the ability to go inside and read this information. But if you tried to take something out of it and you got caught, you go to Leavenworth. I mean, this is a serious situation here, and it's a sad, sad thing that we've got people in this country that are basically giving this guy a pass. Put him in jail. Our country needs to see these people go down for us to even start healing from what that guy did to us. I don't disagree, Rich. I mean, honestly, I don't disagree, and I think it is something we need. I just don't see it happening.
No, I that's what bothers me is you are right, but please, somebody do something. Goodness.
Yeah, that's why we need folks like you out there, riling people up, getting people elected, and maybe we hold on to the House, we hold on to the Senate, and we move forward with people who really want to push in that direction. But Rich, I appreciate the time. Good luck with the move and all that. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Hey, whenever you're down in North Carolina, once the house is built, you got a place to stay, brother.
Already, I appreciate that, man. Good stuff. Our good friend Rich Ojeda. No Dem left behind. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at the work that they do there. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Going to talk a little bit about the assault on public education. You're not going to want to miss that. Also, your thoughts, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1818. That was the day that abolitionist Frederick Douglass chose to celebrate his birthday. He could not be sure of the exact date of his birth because he was born into slavery. He escaped from slavery and became one of the leading black writers and orators for the cause of abolition. After the Civil War, he continued to speak and write, demanding justice for African Americans and working people. For example, In 1871, he penned an article against increasing demands for cheap labor. He wrote, "Cheap labor is a phrase that has no cheering music for the masses. Those who demand it and seek to acquire it have but little sympathy with common humanity. It is the cry of the few against the many." When we inquire who are the men who are continually vociferating for cheap labor, we find the rich and powerful, the crafty and scheming, those who live by the sweat of other men's faces, and who have no intention of cheapening labor by adding themselves to the laboring forces of society. It is the deceitful cry of the fortunate against the unfortunate. Labor is a noble word and expresses a noble idea. Today, we still face a demand for ever cheaper labor. Business leaders and their political friends fight against efforts to raise the minimum wage. From 2011 to 2015, 8 states scaled back their prevailing wage laws, 19 reduced pensions, and 15 eroded collective bargaining rights. As these attacks on working people grow, it seems that Frederick Douglass's reminder that labor is a noble word is needed now more than ever.
We plant the food, we drive the cab, we load the ship.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Corporate CEOs are mostly sedentary, well-heeled money people who would hardly be considered athletic. Yet, every now and then, a few of these soft elites bust out as championship players of an old game called duck and dodge. It's a sport of political finesse, played when social conditions reach a boiling point, threatening problems for the corporate order. In such moments, executives sometimes leap forward as social activists, claiming to side with the aggrieved. Ducking and dodging their own responsibility for the grievances, these corporate players insist that they will fix the system. But when public attention drifts, so do the fixers, returning to business as usual. Remember a year ago, for example, when our very democracy was under siege, not only by seditious right-wing extremist groups that stormed the U.S. Capitol, but also by a clique of pusillanimous right-wing Congress critters who joined the coup attempt. Outrageous, shouted members of the corporate establishment, pledging that they would save our democracy. How? By cutting off the huge campaign donations that they'd been giving to those 147 Republican lawmakers who voted to overturn the election. But wait, these born-again democracy champions are the very same corporations that use special interest cash to purchase lawmakers wholesale and steal the people's political power. Yet now they want us to believe they're our saviors? Sure enough, they quickly reverted to their true selves. Within weeks of so sternly chastising the seditious members of Congress, the corporate donors quietly returned to lavishing bribery bucks on them. Some 700 corporate phonies slipped $2.4 million in donations last year to members of Congress they were publicly condemning as un-American. This is Jim Hightower saying, it'd make more sense to trust a coyote to guard your last lamb chop than to think that corporations value anything but their own profit.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So David Perdue, the former senator from Georgia and now candidate for senator there in Georgia, he's saying that by Twitter banning Donald Trump, that's what the Nazis used to do. It's what Nazi Germany did. The quote was, "When individual citizens lose their right of free voice, then we turn into Germany in 1933, Russia in 1919, and Cuba in 1959, Venezuela today." Yeah, I mean, between that and Congresswoman Marjorie Gazpacho Taylor Greene, I gotta tell you, we need education, and we need education badly, especially for some. And again, Democrats, you really messed up by throwing her off the education committee. Can you imagine the fun you would have had with her on that committee? Bad move. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, do we need remedial history education? Just a little bit. I know there are some who are screaming, no, we don't want to learn. but do we need some remedial work? That's why I've asked Dan Montgomery to come talk with us. Dan is the president of the Illinois Federation of Teachers, ift-aft.org, their website. Dan, thanks for taking time for us.
Absolutely. Always great to be with you. And I agree. They should have kept her on the education committee. She might have been able to learn something.
See, this is what I said right from the beginning, and I got nothing but heat from Democrats. It's a dumb idea. We shouldn't leave her. I'm going, no. You could say, hey, we need more funding. Exhibit A.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'll tell you, that David Perdue quote, what reminded me of Nazi Germany was Donald Trump saying that immigrants are not human. That struck me as kind of reminiscent of Nazi era, but I guess David Perdue and I will agree to disagree.
Yeah, but we're in this moment, Dan, and I think you know this better than anybody, where education is under attack like never before, and this has been ramping up for the last couple of decades. This is not new, as you know, but it's hitting a fevered pitch right now towards not just where we're attacking the education system, or we're attacking, the federal mandates or things like that. We're looking at attacking individual teachers and destroying their livelihoods for having the audacity to teach history. And that is insane to me.
It is. And I hate to say it, but we're seeing here in Illinois, I can just tell you, it's every day I get a few reports of, often they're union leaders, by the way, but not always, rank and file teachers a lot of times. Angry citizens, I guess the term is. They're often not parents in a school district, but they're angry citizens, writing the school board, going to the school board meetings, wanting people fired because they think they're teaching CRT. They think they're communists. Seriously, that's one of them. We had one parent sign his email to the school board as domestic terrorist, and then he wondered why people wanted to call the police just to have him checked on. I mean, it's not even debate. It's not even public discourse, but that's the level now we are facing in school boards all across the state. And by the way, I'm in constant dialogue with my counterparts in other states, other state fed presidents of teachers unions. It's the same everywhere. Blue state, red state, purple state. The degree to which it's happening, varies, but it's the same everywhere.
But that's legitimate public discourse. If January 6th is legitimate public discourse, so is saying that you're a domestic terrorist. I mean,
that's right.
Stop and think about what has to be going between your ears to actually write that down and think that someone's going to see that in this day and age as ironic or satirical.
Well, exactly. And that came at the tail end of a very angry letter about a bunch of issues. And then when as anyone would do, just notified the local police just to say, hey, heads up, I don't know if he's a terrorist, but he's signing his name that way. They checked on him. And then now he says he's being persecuted by the left and it's a police state. Well, it's like the old adage, yelling fire in a crowded theater. We do have free speech, but you can't put people in danger. And calling yourself a terrorist, I'm sorry, if that brings some, mild level of people checking on you, that's the world we're in. No, it's unbelievable to me.
Well, I look at the woman in, I think it was Virginia, where she said, my kids will be coming with no masks and I'll be here on Monday with my guns. And you go,
You're right.
What?
Yeah, where we've got school shootings happening in every state. We live in a country where one child an hour is shot in gun violence. Right, exactly. And this was a mother. I know. It's mind-boggling. I can just tell you, our members, our teachers and school staff, I've never seen anything like it. We have people, every time I go to a meeting, our members are in tears. People are leaving. People are quitting. They can't take it anymore. There's bullying going on, about mask wearing.
Is that the goal?
Kids bullying other kids and adults bullying adults.
But isn't that the goal? Troubling. When you stop and look at this, Dan, isn't the goal to get teachers to leave the profession, to make the job so intolerable that eventually no one wants to do it? so they can privatize, profitize, and prioritize it, so that only the select few can get from a select kind of, this is the world that I, there was just a report that's saying around the world democracy is waning. There are fewer democracies now than there used to be. We're heading in this right-wing kind of, authoritarian kind of world, and we're doing this too. And the destruction of public education is central to the end of democracy, because if we can't have a common education system, that there are things we all agree on, where we get into our little slivers and our little factions, that's the end of this country.
Yeah, no, it's true. The old the AFT for years had as their slogan, democracy and education, education for democracy. You go back to the great progressive philosophers like John Dewey and Francis Parker, people like that. I mean, the entire project of American education was the furtherance of a democracy. And it's really very concerning that you now have people who seem to think that the project of it, the purpose of it, is to satisfy every single parent's whim about a curriculum for which they have some personal agenda or axe to grind.
No, it's crazy.
And so there, what happened to the communitarian ideal of American democracy? I don't know. I mean, I think the lesson for us all, especially progressives and educators, is we got to double down. We got to do even more work to revive civics education, democracy education, if you will. And there are ways to do that. And it does include, by the way, being honest about our history. You can't teach a child to be a critical thinker about any issue, science, the arts, history, math, any issue, without teaching them the full breadth of history and the full ability to think critically and question everything. I mean, I used to say to my students, my job was to be an alien force in their lives, right? Because there's a lot of factors that try to keep the status quo. You turn on the TV or a streaming service, that's the nature of capitalism, right? They're trying to sell you something to keep you in the room with your credit card, with your whatever, to keep buying things. But the project of education is for you to create your own and equip your own vigorous mind to challenge the atmosphere you're in. And that really seems to scare some people.
That's most certainly, because you might start be talking about that theory of critical something or other, and that's bad. Mm-hmm. We know that's bad because it's a theory and it's critical. So it's got to be something to be concerned about. Most certainly. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Dan Montgomery. Dan's the president of the Illinois Federation of Teachers. You want to check out their website, ift-aft.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. If you're just joining us, by all means, download the podcast so you never miss an episode. Take the program on the go wherever you go. You got a question, comment, something on your mind for Dan, give us a yell, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. So now I'm looking at, I'm looking at the kind of attacks that we're seeing on teachers. Oklahoma is kind of been the place where I've been the whole time. Are you seeing anything going on in your state that kind of mirrors those kind of attacks that you're seeing in Oklahoma?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Rick, I was distracted a little bit. I'm trying to make sure I don't run out of power here. What we're seeing, so what's happened here, and you may have heard about it, it originated in certain counties in kind of Trump country, Illinois, if you will, where people have filed lawsuits to block the mask mandates we have, vaccine mandates, those sorts, like the public health measures. And a judge in Springfield actually issued a TRO, basically suspended the governor's lawful orders. And by the way, when she was holding the hearings in her courtroom, she had her mask on her chin. And every time the assistant AG rose to speak, she told him to take his mask off in her courtroom. This was in a trial about the validity of mask mandates. Okay, and so that has sort of opened up a Pandora's box. And even though her ruling, where she undid the mask mandate, only applied to certain school districts, lots of school districts around the state have said, "Oh, we're not going to do it either."
Right.
And then you've seen like issue after issue. It's like it really is like turning over a rock or something. And people now want to challenge all sorts of things. And CRT, which is not even, don't even get me started. But CRT is not a pedagogy that is taught in elementary school. Let me tell you, right? It's an economic theory that was devised in, law schools, kind of. So it's like a straw man the right is using to attack the teaching of history
and successfully,
to attack everything.
Dan, I mean, they're using it successfully. So what's the argument to push back on that? Look, they've scared the hell out of white suburban soccer moms, the quote unquote security moms, the uneducated security moms, the mama bears of Sarah Palin. They've scared the hell out of these women, and because they think the boogeyman is coming. When it's not, nobody's teaching this. It's not there. They've been sold this. What's the response to go, no?
Right. So you hit it on the head. But I think one of the things, like buried deep in a lot of data and polling and stuff, is that like those moms and most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, actually trust their own schools. The vast majority of Americans think, this was recent polling, the AFT did of public school parents, the vast majority of them think their schools got it mostly right when it comes to COVID. Like, did they close too soon? Did they close too late? Did they, do they have the mandates right? So it's one of these classic things where they're more worried about some other district. They're more worried about some nebulous thing out there that's happening, but not happening so much in their district, right? Oh, they like their teachers for the most part. So now that's not to say they're not going to their own school board meetings. They are. But it's like they don't want it happening here, So I think I hate to say it, it's not an easy answer, but I think the answer has got to be engagement. The answer can't be just shut them out and say, you're wrong, go away, because they're not going to go away, right? The answer is dialogue, is an engagement, which is, by the way, really hard to do right now because of, COVID. Because people aren't meeting in person like they normally have, It's like to say, let's have a coffee at someone's house on a Sunday morning and talk about some of these issues is still harder than it was pre-COVID. So I think some of that has been exacerbated by just, having to be distant from each other. But I think over time, lots of dialogue, lots of talking and education. I mean, I'm an educator. I don't know how else to do it. We can't round them up and send them to re-education camps. I wouldn't recommend that.
Although that's what they'd like us to do.
I know.
But the reason I bring this up is we see in places like Oklahoma where they want to sue teachers who teach anything outside of someone's sincerely held religious belief. So if you dare teach evolution as a science teacher, if you dare talk contraception as a health teacher, if you dare talk, anything that outside of their, sincerely, quote unquote, sincerely held belief, they're going to sue teachers, individual teachers, $10,000 a piece, ban them from teaching for 5 years, all kinds of draconian stuff.
Right.
Utah, they're going to allow teachers to be sued for really any reason. If I'm offended at all by anything you say, I'm going to sue you. Yeah. This stuff's happening in states all across the country. So my question is, is this happening just by chance, or do you think, as I do, that this is a well-funded, well-organized group pushing these kind of gag orders all across the country? We got a couple here in Pennsylvania that are banging around. Fortunately, our governor's going to veto them, but they're everywhere.
They are everywhere, and Republicans have introduced them everywhere too, including in this state. And no, I agree with you. I mean, it's definitely part of the. Hey, look, what did Steve Bannon say? He said the way to victory in 2024 is through American school boards. Through American school boards. So it is a culture war being foisted on the entire country by the Trumpists and the right wing. And they're almost only too happy to see it consume this country. It's so that, and if nothing else, Like that should disqualify you. If you're a kind of like, middle of the road American, you don't know which way to go. Yeah, I like the Republicans on some things. I like the Democrats on like that alone should force you to be virulently anti-Republican, because they have forsaken any claim they have to a real seat at the table in American polity, because they're trying to burn it down for political reasons, trying to burn it down. And I think we saw the beginnings of it, with Trump for sure. He's a master at it, but not just Trump. Mitch McConnell saying we're not going to take Merrick Garland up for a vote. Like, I'm just deciding right now that I'm going to seize one branch of government because I can, purely for a political reason. Like, that's the beginnings of this. The Tea Party was the beginnings of this. What was the Tea Party? It was a reaction to a black man becoming president. I mean, really, when you think about it.
And that was critical.
Yeah,
it's probably a theory too. We're not sure, but we know it was critical.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, the solutions are not easy. They're not. I don't have it on me right now, but I keep Tim Snyder's book about democracy and tyranny close at heart. His 24 lessons, 22 lessons, something like that. I mean, those like speak up, get engaged in the local process, do these things. And he's working off the history. I mean, he's an expert in the history of Europe between the wars and World War II. I mean, he's basically saying the lesson of World War II and Nazism, it obtains now. And I think I was just watching some reports about Ukraine. And, this is a classic situation where Americans, our history, our lack of history, our lack of situation in Europe, our kind of isolation hurts us on the world stage, because most Americans don't see what's at stake. If you live in Poland, you see what's at stake in Ukraine.
Yep.
If you live in Germany, if you live in France, if you live Lithuania, much of Europe, they've seen land wars. A lot of people living in Europe have lived through a land war, and Americans just don't have that background. So we have to do a better job educating people and keeping up the strong argument for democracy.
Yeah, since you brought that up, let me ask you this, because I'm actually surprised by a number of my Trump supporting Republican voting friends who are siding with Putin, saying we shouldn't get involved, we should let him do whatever he wants. It's not our fight. We should stay completely out of it. And look, I don't want our soldiers throwing shots or anything like that if we don't have to.
Right.
I don't want to get pulled into World War III. But to do nothing, I don't think we should do that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and most experts will tell you that's exactly what Putin is banking on, and he doesn't want a ground war like a shooting war with the West, but he's going to push it. He's going to push it, and that's what he's been doing. He's pushing it to win gains, and I mean, he did it in Crimea. He's doing it in the Ukraine, and he's afraid of nothing, I think. I actually had this other thought. I haven't heard anyone write about this, but that, I think Putin was very happy to have Donald Trump as president for a bunch of reasons. And I think he's worried about the Democrats winning. I think he's very unhappy that Joe Biden's president. And I think part of this is him trying to mess with American politics too, is trying to complicate things for a Democratic president because it's in his interest to have Donald Trump or another Republican as president. How does that make you feel as an American?
No. Look, I still believe that the Russian, social media team, the disinformation team, got Trump elected. All of the stuff that they did back in 2016, there's no question in my mind they want the Donald to come back, because hey, if you looked at that press conference in Helsinki, I'd want him too. I would want that American president if I'm Putin, no matter what.
I know. You and I think we're around the same age. I mean, like of my formative years, it was still the Cold War.
Yep.
Ronald Reagan saying the evil empire. I actually studied Russian in college for a while. I thought I might be a Russian and Eastern European studies major. And it's hard for me to shake the view of and Putin is a sort of Soviet-style ruler. He really is. And he's trying to reclaim for Russia, an important influence in Europe, which has been always troublesome to them, that at the end of the Cold War, that they lost the kind of, What was Gerald Ford's comment? Remember when it cost Gerald Ford to say Poland wasn't under the sphere of Soviet influence in the debate? And what was that, 76 probably?
Yeah.
Or, yeah. So, I mean, that tells you, it's like, right? Like Poland isn't under the sphere of Soviet influence really anymore, like it was. So I think that deeply troubles Putin, and he sees it his job to sort of restore that sphere of influence.
Now, last
And
question
it's
I
not
got
good
for you.
for the world order.
And kind of wrapping things up, on the education
sure.
front, I want to go back to that. Clearly in your state of Illinois and my state of Pennsylvania and all across the country, these are there. And these gag order rules, we want cameras in the classroom. We want curriculum to be put online, even though it's already there. There are all these kind of really restrictive, kind of pointed laws. At what point do the American people say enough? Do you see there being a backlash to this kind of this right-wing assault, this grievance assault? Do you see any backlash, or does this just whimper away at some point?
No, I do. I mean, I do think there is a pushback and an assault, and pushback against the assault. And you're starting to see it. You're starting to see some more organization in Illinois. Our school boards races, our elections aren't till next year, till 23. That's the year that they're always in an off year, school board elections. And I mean, we're working hard to, help those really great schools, because there are good school board members, and it's one of the toughest jobs. It pays nothing. It's thankless. In a good year, it's thankless. Right. And now, you're subject to a lot of really bad stuff. But I don't want to sound like a Pollyanna, but I actually do have faith that, what we're seeing is a minority. It is a very, very vocal and obnoxious and hateful minority, but it is a minority, of people. When you talk about the issues, the polling, I was looking at more polling today. A strong majority of Americans are in favor of mask mandates. A strong majority of Americans are still in favor of mask mandates in school. They want their children to be healthy.
Yep.
They do. And so I think, they're really loud. They're scary. They're obnoxious. But, I think we're going to see over time. I was encouraged to see, actually, in Ottawa, in Canada, there was a big counter protest. God bless those Canadians. 3,000 people protesting against the crazy trucker. They're not even truckers, but those, white supremacists and others that were demonstrating and blockading in Ottawa. So I mean, we haven't seen the crowd that big here, but I am confident that we're gonna hold the line here. People are gonna work really hard to make sure the right things happen.
There you go.
For our kids.
Good stuff, Dan. I appreciate the time, man. Good talking with you.
Always great to talk with you, Rick. Stay well.
Look forward to having you back again real soon. Dan Montgomery. He is the president of the Illinois Federation of Teachers. Make sure you check out their website, ift-aft.org. We'll get links out on social media on how you can take a look at that. Also, love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. If you've missed any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, like I said, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, because I'm curious, at what point do we parents, the silent majority, say, I've had enough of this? At what point do parents say enough insanity? Because, Dan made an interesting point. It's kind of like that thing about Congress. Everybody hates Congress except their congressperson. It's the same thing here. Everyone seems to be, at least the loudmouths, seem to be opposed to public education except theirs. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Rather than come forward with what their own scientists had concluded, they engaged in a campaign of denial and delay, which continues on today.
Climate scientists rebuke big oil during House hearing. Disturbing new data finds hot oceans are the new normal. Plus,
you may not know, unless you've driven an electric vehicle before, that once you drive one, you ain't ever going back.
Fact check. True.
Biden White House announces another major EV manufacturing plant for the U.S.
All of those major stories and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
We saw restrictions placed on production here in the United States, and now we find ourselves on the brink of war, where literally thousands of lives hang in the balance because of climate hysteria.
What are you talking about, Congressman Michael Cloud of Texas? This is your Green News Report. Desi Doyen, I don't even know what the hell that guy is talking about. I can't even make a snarky comment about it because he's nuts.
Yes, climate science denying House Republicans were up to their old tricks in a House Oversight Committee hearing this week that was focused on the fossil fuel industry's campaign of lies and disinformation that cast doubt on man-made global warming. The hearing also focused on whether big oil's new promises to cut their emissions are adequate under the Paris Climate Agreement.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Spoiler alert. They aren't.
Oh.
Oil companies Exxon, Chevron, BP, and Shell declined to attend and were postponed to next month. Instead, climate scientists detailed how those oil companies knew for decades that burning their product causes dangerous man-made global warming, then lied about it to the public and are still delaying the shift to clean energy. The scientists noted that the oil industry is directing only a tiny fraction of their investments to renewable energy solutions. Penn State University's Dr. Michael Mann explained how big oil's public declarations to reduce emissions are belied by the fact that they plan to expand drilling.
They love to talk about how they are going to decrease the carbon intensity of their fossil fuels. That's sort of like your doctor telling you that you need to cut fat from your diet, and so you switch to 40% reduced fat potato chips, but you eat twice as many of them. That doesn't help. The net amount of fat that you're taking in actually increases.
I don't have any snarky comments anymore. It is madness.
And that madness matters. A new analysis of climate data by The Guardian finds that a third of Americans are currently experiencing rapid, above-average rates of temperature increase. 499 U.S. counties have already breached the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming limit outlined in the UN Paris Climate Agreement. Nearly 130 million Americans across large swaths of the country have seen soaring temperature increases since record-keeping began in the late 1800s. The analysis also found that the United States as a whole has heated up over the past century due to climate warming emissions from fossil fuels. It also matters because the oceans absorb much of the atmospheric heat trapped by humanity's greenhouse gas emissions. A new study from California's Monterey Bay Aquarium analyzed marine temperatures over the past 150 years and found that marine heat waves used to be rare a century ago, but every year since 2014, at least half of the global ocean surface has recorded extreme heat. In 2019, that hit 60%. The researchers warn that marine heat waves have, quote, become the new normal and are yet another piece of evidence that should be a wake-up call to act on climate change.
Should be. I'm sure everything's fine.
A different study focused on refuges for coral, where cooler currents provide coral reefs a bit of protection from global warming. Researchers found that those refuges, however, are disappearing faster than expected. And that matters because coral reefs are the nurseries for marine life that millions of people rely on for their primary food source. But some good news.
Please?
President Biden this week announced that yet another major electric vehicle equipment manufacturer is headed to the United States. Australian auto electrical equipment giant Tritium, which makes electric vehicle chargers, will build its first American manufacturing plant in Tennessee.
And it's going to have a ripple effect beyond and far beyond the one state. Tritium's new facility is going to produce up to 30,000 of these chargers every year. They'll use American parts, American iron, American steel, and they'll be installed up and down the highways and corridors in our communities all across the country. So the benefits are going to ripple to thousands of miles in every direction.
Well, that's good news. By the way, have you heard President Biden utter the words Tesla?
He did this time.
What?
Yes.
It took long enough. It's as if it was a car company created on Mars. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it was 11 years ago today that the uprising in Madison, Wisconsin began. And I remember it like it was yesterday because I remember telling my friends in Pennsylvania, be very aware of what happens there, that is the beginning of that's the beginning of the end. All of the horrible policies that Scott Walker was moving, all of that stuff was eventually going to make it here, and it did. It went through Ohio, Michigan, and eventually it found its way to Pennsylvania. Hasn't been as bad yet, but we ain't done yet, which is why I think it's important to remember the 11th anniversary and maybe, think about how, go back and look at what was right, what was wrong, and how to make sure that, we start fighting back again. That's why I've asked John Nichols to come talk with us. John is a national correspondent for the good folks over at The Nation magazine, where he does fantastic work. You'll want to check that out. We'll get links out on social media, how you can do that. But John, thanks for taking time for us.
It's an honor to be with you, Rick.
So, I'm looking at this day 11 years ago, the beginning of what happened in Madison. In fact, right when I met you very soon right after, because we were out there for 10 days sleeping on the floor of the Capitol. And there were so many memories, so many things that came out of that, so many opportunities to talk to people and really, pull back the cover of the right-wing money that was behind all of the Walker attacks. Critique of the last 11 years on how Democrats, how the left, how we've handled that onslaught?
Well, it hasn't been good. Look, here's the interesting thing. Organized labor is more popular today than it has been at any time since the mid-1960s. It's dramatically more popular now than it was 11 years ago. So at one level, we've had an interesting thing happen, and that is that people have realized they desperately need unions, and people love unions. The fact of the matter is that there's an enthusiasm for it in the polling data that is through the roof. The problem is that Democrats, when they have had power, have not stood as strong as they should with unions. Now, it isn't that Democrats are anti-union. They're not like the Republicans. But there's an interesting thing. When Republicans come to power, one of the first things they do is take care of their own, right? They make sure that the laws are favorable toward their base, if you will. Well, unions historically were a big part of the Democratic base. They're also, much more importantly than that, a big part of the underpinning of a functional democracy, of a functional civil society. And yet, when Democrats have been in power, they really haven't, hustled as hard as they should.
Yeah, and a perfect example to your point, if I can cut you off real quick,
sure,
is you look at what happened in Kentucky. When Kentucky took power, the first thing they did, in fact, a special session to pass right-to-work legislation. A special session. They got up early on a Saturday morning to get in there and get that work done. Yet in Virginia, when Democrats had the chance to do it, well,
didn't do it.
Maybe not.
They didn't get rid of right to work. And I can tell you this, if they had gotten rid of right to work, number one, it would have been popular. That's the first thing to understand. Democrats, why they don't think this is super popular is crazy, because they're not, they read polls about everything else, but not about this. Number two, if they had gotten rid of right to work, they would have won the 2021 election cycle in Virginia. That would have been sufficient because they didn't lose by that much there. And so, I mean, here's the fundamental level. It is morally right to be pro-union. it is also politically smart to be pro-union. And so you asked me about the last 11 years. I would say the people have gotten it. The people actually recognize that really well. Democratic politicians still wrestling with it a little bit.
So now let's take a look at what we saw happen there, where 100,000 people. This was a real popular uprising. This was 100,000 people who made it to Madison from all over the country, and a lot of people from mostly from Wisconsin. Compare that to what we saw this past couple of weeks up in Canada, where we saw maybe 1,000 trucks. There were a couple thousand people. Do you see a similarity? Do you see differences? How do you view it?
Well, look. At the most basic level, people have a right to assemble and to petition for the redress of grievances. That's a baseline concept. It's an American concept, but I think it's one the Canadians understand as well. So I'm not against people protesting. I'm not against people, coming together and saying, "Here's my opinion. This is where I stand." But huge difference. Number one, Canadian protests tiny, right? Really incredibly small. If it had been that number of people out in Madison, wouldn't have mattered at all, right? It would have been forgotten in a couple hours. And so Canadian protests an awful lot smaller. The other thing that I would suggest is a different attitude, frankly, toward what they're trying to do in Madison and in Ohio, where they all had similar protests back in 2011. You had great masses of people out who were saying, look, we want to maintain a set of rules. We want to have a playing field on which, it is where we believe it'll be fair for everybody. And that's what we're trying to defend. The people who are trying to tear stuff down, in that case, were the governor, those in the legislature. In Canada, what I've been struck by is that there's a much more anarchical approach to it all. They want to get rid of the rules. They don't really want to care. It doesn't seem to me about their neighbors, about others. Now, again, I'm not even trying to beat them up on this. I understand, they're coming from where they're coming from, but I do think it's a very, very different place than where the protests in Wisconsin came from. And also, one other thing I will suggest to you. In Wisconsin, it was everywhere. You saw what happened in Madison, where there was 100, 125, even 150,000 on some key days. But there was also, on those very same days, there would be 3,000 or 4,000 in Kenosha, and 1,000 out in Milwaukee, and 1,000 out in some small town up in northern Wisconsin by Lake Superior. Yeah. And so it really was something. I've never seen anything quite like it, where so many people were out. And it was very clear that those in power were going to do everything they could to stop them. And ultimately they did succeed, and so I always say that the story of what happened in Wisconsin in its moment was an inspiring story, and one that made you incredibly proud, incredibly hopeful, but also a sad story because, if it was a movie, at the end, the good guys would have won, but it wasn't a movie. And Scott Walker and his crew, it took eight years to get them out of office and to get a new governor. So it was a long, hard struggle.
Yeah, but one of the things that also is interesting to me, I remember signs all around the Capitol saying, "Thank you, CNN, for telling me what's on Twitter," because for the time that we were there, and I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
But the thing that struck me is while we were there, and we were there at the beginning, we were there for the first 2 weeks almost. There was no real national news. There was no coverage. It didn't get this kind of massive media coverage that these couple thousand in Canada have gotten. This international, this global kind of news where, they're fighting against mandates, and all the right-wing hate groups with their Nazi and Confederate flags are getting on the front page of newspapers. That didn't happen here. And it's interesting to me why some of the frames of why this, Why did this get the attention of corporate-controlled media, whereas 100,000, 150,000 working people saying, no, we don't want to destroy labor conditions, we don't want to destroy education, we don't want to harm public sector workers, that didn't get the same kind of coverage?
Well, I think your question is a very, very good one. First off, give credit to Ed Schultz from MSNBC, because he actually did come out and cover it. He did a good job, but he was a standout. He was in many ways a rare player there. There was some other media that paid attention to it. Tom Hartman paid good attention, and I give him credit. But you're right. By and large, media didn't pay attention. Why is that? Because media is not interested in and engaged with the condition of and the demands of working class people. Media is interested in power plays between elites, right? And it happens that at this moment in this coronavirus pandemic, this period, we've got a battle between elites, right? We have some folks who are in favor of science, in favor of mandates, and they have power. It's President of the United States, Prime Minister of Canada. You have other folks who are very powerful, Fox News and the right-wing talk radio networks, and major political players in the Republican Party who are on the other side of that issue, right? So media knows how to cover that, because our media is very, very good at covering elites. And if they can get a little bit of what looks like a populist fervor on one side of, backing one of the elite groupings, that they know how to cover that. That's good theater for them. But when you have real indigenous grassroots mobilization, where people actually rise up, something that's genuine and coming from the working class, our media, by and large, doesn't know how to cover that, doesn't have much interest in it, to be honest.
Now, for me, John, the message for me now, as a labor guy, as someone who's done organizing, someone who believes in union supporting, and as someone who's been a truck driver for over 30 years, the message that I now got from the outrage candy crowd in our right-wing media is that it's okay to turn the truck sideways on the highway. It's okay to shut cities down. It's okay to shut trade routes down using the trucks. So when we decide, if truck drivers ever get a thought in their head that they are being cheated on wages, hours, conditions, that they should be fighting for better opportunities for themselves and their families, that they do get it in their head that, hey, this is the right fight, this is the righteous fight. Will those same bloviators, will that same corporate-controlled media who's been pimping the outrage in Canada, will they be on the same side of it if drivers ever decide, you know what, I do want better wages, hours, and conditions, I'm going on strike? You think that'll happen?
Yeah. Rick, of course you know the answer to your question. Of course not. Because when you have a mobilization of some kind, even law breaking of some kind, that is on the side of corporate power, right? That is on the side of at least some of the elites, then, yeah, they're cheer that on. But if you actually are challenging power, if you are actually saying, no, we'd like a different order of things here. We'd like to have economic and social and racial justice. We'd like to have some fairness. That scares elite media. And they immediately go to the other side. And I'll give you a good example here. If you had working class people actually occupying a city and bringing the economy to a standstill, which, by the way, did not happen in Madison, right?
No, in fact,
there are businesses.
I would argue the economy in Madison skyrocketed because I know people who were sending pizzas from all over the country. We're sending pizzas to people and food to people, and I would argue that the economic activity of that area went up because of it.
There are still Madison businesses that look back, longingly to those moments, right, to that period. So it's a very, very different thing. And also, but I guess going back to this core point, that what you were raising is, if you had working class people really shutting down the economy, right, in that kind of way, oh my gosh, you'd have power move immediately to upend them. That would be media power, that would be political power, policing power. And here's the interesting thing. Look at how slowly Justin Trudeau and the Canadians have responded to this challenge, right? It's been very, very slow and lackadaisical. Now, finally, after quite a bit of time, they look to be clearing the bridge and stepping up to push back. if this was a genuine working class uprising for economic justice, I think you'd see power respond immediately to shut it down.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you one other thing, Rick. What did happen in Wisconsin, because the Wisconsin protests were so peaceful, right, and so genuine in their approach, that it did spread very, very fast. And so the fact of the matter is, I think that's what power fears the most, is when they see grassroots mobilization that actually is, genuine and it moves quickly. That's what gets dangerous to power. It actually is. And so they're always looking for ways to shut that down. Whereas the Canadian thing, they waited a very long time to try and shut it down.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a question for John Nichols. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast so you don't miss any of it. Also love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. To that point, I remember, interviewing, some of the TAA, some of the graduate union folks who were literally on their hands and knees scrubbing tape and things off the floor, going, do your parents know what you're doing right now? Because I guarantee you would never do this in your own house, but you're going to come here to the Capitol just so that you didn't have those talking points of things being destroyed. It was the cleanest revolution I've ever seen.
Well, Rick, but it wasn't just to take away the talking points. It was because there was a genuine sense that Capitol belonged to the people, and they weren't going to wreck it, right? They didn't see government as the enemy. They were at odds with people who were currently in control of government. Excellent. And who were attacking the basic order. But they actually wanted that Capitol to be strong, and they wanted, it to respond to their needs, those in power are there. So it was that. There was also something else about it. There was an incredible welcoming. And I can tell you that I saw things happen there that I've rarely seen in covering politics for decades. I saw lesbians and gays and transgender people who were out there, standing next to, 6 foot 8 inch tall prison guards, right? And they were taking pictures together. They were standing in solidarity with each other. These are not people that usually were in the same circles, right? They didn't always come into contact. But in this case, you just saw so much of a kind of a removal of the barriers between different people in society. And you did see people, I think, who had never thought that they were in solidarity with some of the folks they were working with, suddenly throw aside all the preconceptions and say, you know what? I don't know a lot about you, but you're here, I'm here, we're standing together. Let's back each other up. And
this is the righteous fight.
Yeah, I saw people back each other up, and I got to tell you, it was, even to this day, it brings a tear to my eye when I think about it, because to my mind, when you saw the farmers arrive, riding their tractors in, and to be in solidarity with the public employees, and you saw, snowplow drivers and prison guards and teachers and, again, farmers and small business owners all coming together. It was sort of, I guess, for lack of a better term, the dream of what you might want in a genuine sense of solidarity, genuine sense of people power.
I still remember the firefighters coming in with the bagpipes and their uniforms.
Absolutely.
As well. But, to your point, Wisconsin was the most friendly place I've ever been to. Because look, I've been at protests, I've been on picket lines, I've been in all these things. And look, as a Teamster for over 30 years, there's a reputation there. So as we're driving the distance to get to Madison, all the little tidbits of news that we're getting is there's violence breaking out, there's bad things happening. And I remember, because I'm getting, okay, let's see what's going on. I was met, the woman who met me as I was walking up the aisle to the Capitol was about 90 years old. I've got the picture still. She's got a cardboard thing around her face and said I'm a 98-year-old Union thug. She handed me a bratwurst. She handed me a freaking bratwurst, and I'm going, I guess this is a party. I guess this is not what it is. And I've never eaten so well as I did while we were there.
Well, Rick, you're bringing up something that I think is important to remember in this. And it is interesting. About the Madison thing, there was an immense sense of humor. Everybody tried to outdo each other with funnier signs. And the winner of it was an 84-year-old woman from Whitewater, Wisconsin, which is only, it's not 50 miles away. It's not very far. But there was a woman who came up. She had never been to Madison. And she said, I remember interviewing her, she said, this is my first time in Madison, right? And I said, really? You don't live that far away? She said, I never thought it was necessary till now, right? And you had so many people who showed up, and they were very good spirited. They were very good humored. The funniest thing I did see was an older woman with a walker, with one of those, she was pushing her little cart there, right? And she had hung a handwritten sign on it because the Republican governor was named Scott Walker. And she said, at least this walker is useful.
I like it.
Yeah, I know but you saw that everywhere. And the fact of the matter is that the only people who there was really deep antipathy toward was billionaires. And there's a good deal of antipathy toward the billionaire class.
Diane Hendricks.
Yep. And the Koch brothers. And then there was antipathy toward Walker. And it was rooted in what he was doing. It was about his policies. The interesting thing about it is that even at the worst of it, I knew Republican legislators who walked through the middle of the Capitol. And somebody would yell at them and they'd say, they would, definitely say, hey, change your policy, or you're wrong, or stuff like that. But you never got to a point where they couldn't do that. No. Now they tried to create the fantasy that they couldn't. They lied a lot about it. They said, oh, we're under threat, we're under siege, and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, I was there, and I saw the reality of it. That these were people engaging in their constitutional right to peacefully protest for a redress of grievances.
Absolutely. So last question I've got for you then. Yeah. In looking at what happened, because I think you made an incredible point by people coming together who had never been, never had any common ground. I think the Democratic Party's in one of those moments as well. I think the country's in one of those moments where we've been sliced and diced and pitted against one another. Do you see something that brings us back? I've been saying, the workplace, labor organizing, this is how we move the country back together and forward. I'm curious your thought.
No, I tend to agree with you. Look, I've got a new book out about the coronavirus pandemic. And one of the things that I argue in it is that there needs to be accountability. One of the things that does draw people together is a sense that there are rules, right? A sense that you can have accountability. And I do think that this pandemic that we've just been through has shaken us, that we are going through still to some extent, has shaken us a great deal. And as a result, if we don't have some focus on holding to account those who have really screwed us over, and that's pharmaceutical companies that have made unbelievable amounts of money, that's billionaires who have gotten incredibly richer when the rest of us were supposedly sharing in our sacrifice. I think accountability does bring the great mass of people together, and it cuts through a lot of the BS, right? Then you're not, all these people opposing mandates and stuff like that, because your attention and your energy is turned toward the real problem. And the real problem is corporate power.
There you go.
The real problem is politics aligned with corporate power. So I do think we can come together, but there's got to be leadership in that regard. And there does have to be a demand that those who harm us be held to account. And without that, then I think the circumstance can be exploited to divide us up. So we're in a tough place, brother.
And also a system that's going to do that. And it's something we certainly have to work on. But John, I appreciate you taking time with us. I'd love to have you come back and talk about the book very soon, but I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I'm so honored to be with you, brother. Keep strong and welcome to radio in Madison.
Good stuff. Thanks so much. Our good friend John Nichols, national correspondent for The Nation magazine. We'll get links out on social media. If you miss anything of any of today's program, make sure you download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1818. That was the day that abolitionist Frederick Douglass chose to celebrate his birthday. He could not be sure of the exact date of his birth because he was born into slavery. He escaped from slavery and became one of the leading black writers and orators for the cause of abolition. After the Civil War, he continued to speak and write, demanding justice for African Americans and working people. For example, in 1871, he penned an article against increasing demands for cheap labor. He wrote, "Cheap labor is a phrase that has no cheering music for the masses. Those who demand it and seek to acquire it have but little sympathy with common humanity. It is the cry of the few against the many." When we inquire who are the men who are continually vociferating for cheap labor, we find the rich and powerful, the crafty and scheming, those who live by the sweat of other men's faces, and who have no intention of cheapening labor by adding themselves to the laboring forces of society. It is the deceitful cry of the fortunate against the unfortunate. Labor is a noble word and expresses a noble idea. Today, we still face a demand for ever cheaper labor. Business leaders and their political friends fight against efforts to raise the minimum wage. From 2011 to 2015, 8 states scaled back their prevailing wage laws, 19 reduced pensions, and 15 eroded collective bargaining rights. As these attacks on working people grow, it seems that Frederick Douglass's reminder that labor is a noble word is needed now more than ever.
We plant the food, we drive the cab, we load the ship.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Corporate CEOs are mostly sedentary, well-heeled money people who would hardly be considered athletic. Yet, every now and then, a few of these soft elites bust out as championship players of an old game called duck and dodge. It's a sport of political finesse, played when social conditions reach a boiling point, threatening problems for the corporate order. In such moments, executives sometimes leap forward as social activists, claiming to side with the aggrieved. Ducking and dodging their own responsibility for the grievances, these corporate players insist that they will fix the system. But when public attention drifts, so do the fixers, returning to business as usual. Remember a year ago, for example, when our very democracy was under siege, not only by seditious right-wing extremist groups that stormed the U.S. Capitol, but also by a clique of pusillanimous right-wing Congress critters who joined the coup attempt. Outrageous, shouted members of the corporate establishment, pledging that they would save our democracy. How? By cutting off the huge campaign donations that they'd been giving to those 147 Republican lawmakers who voted to overturn the election. But wait, these born-again democracy champions are the very same corporations that use special interest cash to purchase lawmakers wholesale and steal the people's political power. Yet now they want us to believe they're our saviors? Sure enough, they quickly reverted to their true selves. Within weeks of so sternly chastising the seditious members of Congress, the corporate donors quietly returned to lavishing bribery bucks on them. Some 700 corporate phonies slipped $2.4 million in donations last year to members of Congress they were publicly condemning as un-American. This is Jim Hightower saying, it'd make more sense to trust a coyote to guard your last lamb chop than to think that corporations value anything but their own profit.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
One 866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Got a thought, question, comment? We got time for you. I'm looking at this mayor in Hudson, Ohio. Craig Schubert was his name. Hudson, Summit County, just a suburb of Cleveland, near Akron, Canton, that area over there. Hudson was known for, or is known for, being the residence area of John Brown, the abolitionist, It's got a history like that. Now, evidently, the new is the mayor who somehow linked ice fishing to prostitution. He said during one of the meetings last week, and I didn't get to this. I meant to. It fell off the plate. But he said if you open up this ice fishing, while on the surface it sounds good, then what happens next year? Does someone come back and say, I want an ice shanty for X amount of time? And if you then allow ice fishing with shanties, then that leads to another problem, prostitution. And I got to tell you, I'm not quite sure where he's sticking his pole, but evidently he resigned today because, well, he got mocked incessantly, as probably he should have. And I'm sure the poll comment was everywhere. So good luck to him in his next adventure. Maybe he'll get a shanty on the lake, and, well, who knows what his next job will be. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. It's a cold business.
It is a cold business. Yes, it is. Can you believe? How do you get there? I'm curious how you get from one to the other.
Well, also you have to look back to November, I think it was November of 2021, and he called for the investigation of the entire city school board. And he called on them to resign, and he said they were reckless, and he said they have to be held accountable legally for pornographic content. And that was due to some writing prompts in a textbook. This was on the Akron Beacon Journal back at that point in time, and he caused a lot of controversy. Obviously, at that time, he had ran, I think, for state rep before that, Rick, but he caused a big brouhaha with the school board, and of course, they said we're not resigning. Nothing happened to them. They didn't break any laws. The books weren't burned. Then he turned on this one, which was the idea brought up to do ice fishing, and what he said was, if you ice fish, then at some point in time they could put up these little tents, that you put on the ice.
The shanty huts.
Right, the shanties. And those shanties could then be, obviously, of course, you'd want to go out in the cold, freezing cold in the shanty for prostitution. It just follows naturally.
Somehow. And I got to wonder, this is one of those things.
The Antarctic prostitution is raging out of control.
Yeah.
You do know that.
Yeah, so. But here's the thing, and this is where nobody else in the room was thinking it except him. So the question is, since he now sees pornographic material in every book, his first thought on ice fishing is prostitution. You kind of got to wonder, what's that saying, he doth protest too much?
So would he voluntarily let somebody look at his computer history? Is that what you're saying?
It's kind of where I'm going with this. It's kind of like the guy in Florida. You may remember this back when McCain was running for president. He was the head guy, the state chair for McCain's campaign. He was a state legislator, state senator. He had repeatedly put legislation forward for that, anyone having sex in a public bathroom would get like a just really draconian fine and long prison sentence. Well, lo and behold, isn't it storming and raining one day, and doesn't he run into a bathroom and see a large black man who frightened him enough to offer him to have sex with him?
Right. It scared him.
That was his argument. I'm not making that up.
Right. It was in the bathroom or something down there. Right.
You go. So it's one of those things where you go, he's, and I give him credit. We're going to not have the shanties because then he won't be tempted anymore. I kind of understand the thinking.
Yeah. Well, it's snow
there
and
it
ice.
is for him and the rest of his ilk. I wanted to get your thought on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's quote that was in the New York interview recently. She said, honestly, it's a blank show. It's scandalizing every single day. What is surprising to me is how it never stops being scandalizing. She's talking about the work atmosphere in Congress. Good assessment, bad assessment, thought?
I mean, I don't think that, and what she said that, it was a never-ending scandal. It's subject to groupthink, and she's not saying scandalizing, I think, by, sexual scandals, but by desensitizing. I think she said that things are broken and that, some of the powerful people that make decisions, they're susceptible to groupthink and delusion. I personally think that Congress is basically broken. Don't get me wrong on that. I think that the inability of Congress to do what was done in the past, is a shame. I mean, they can't agree on even certain, basic things, although they had an infrastructure bill, but in general they can't. And they used to do at least a little bit of cooperation better. But I don't think it goes to the point where the leaders in particular, or some of the more long-standing members are sort of in this groupthink that controls them. I don't believe that. I think she's unhappy. I think she does make a point that there are some broken ideas that are out there, and you can't cooperate, and things just weren't what they used to be. But I just don't think that it's just completely shot. I think it's in trouble, but I don't think it's completely shot.
Yeah, but you've got people like Marjorie Gazpacho Taylor Greene, who life cannot be easy there. Just the constant kind of chaos, and then not being able to get the things you need done. I don't know. It's one of those things. And I look at this story that came out as well, that you've got Cori Bush pushing for this defund the police thing, Nancy Pelosi rejecting it. Now you've got this kind of, the Democrats seem to want to have chaos among themselves. And is that a leadership problem? Is that a mixed messaging problem? It just seems like they can't get their act together, and then they have to go on and fight with the Republicans.
Yeah, I think it's, like I said, I think it's broken. I agree with her on that. I don't think it's desensitized to the point where members are totally controlled by other members. I think, however, there's enough dysfunction. Marjorie Taylor Greene, people wanting to carry guns on the floor, things that have not happened, at least in my lifetime or when I was, there for 11 years, not to this level. So I agree with AOC that, there's something seriously wrong, but I just don't know that in general that it's completely shot. But I did look, when the speaker talked on the national news yesterday, Speaker Pelosi was talking about and made it very clear there are some people in her caucus that will feel opposite, but they'll still continue to push for things. I don't think it's a breakdown of the leadership as much as it probably is individual members who have the right to say what they want, but some of them just don't understand the vote count when it comes to their colleagues. And I say that with Senator Schumer, who with Senator Manchin, they've been going on since, April, March, back and forth. And I think when you carry it to the point they did, then it loses its impact for the fact that the Republicans are doing nothing to help the process, because it all comes out front. I'm going to agree with you. It's all out front as Democrats fighting Democrats. Yep. And then after you finish fighting the Democrats, then there's the Republicans. I used to tell some of our campaign staff during a campaign when they were, at each other, I said, okay, as soon as we defeat each other, we can go out and defeat my opponent. Right. How about that? I used to tell them that.
It's like going 15 rounds in the locker room before you go out and fight Mike Tyson.
And I know I gave a long answer, but I think it's complicated there now. But I am going to agree that it's broken, and I think the individual members need to sort of understand why they're there and what they need to do instead of total disruption. And then again, let me go back to the leaders at some point in time. Maybe the leaders need to say, okay, kids, party's over. Here's the facts of life. Now, do you want to lose everything? Do you want to not be able to take any of your policies forward? Which is, I'm talking about the Democratic side.
Yep. And look, it's all kind of crazy. And I look at this, we like to look to the past and go, no, things were much better then. And I think they were. Things did get better. We didn't have the sausage making right out in front of us in a lot of places. But I'm sure there was divisions. But I look at the social media and the email stuff. Like today, I got an email from Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley wants the liberals who are so easily triggered. He wants to give his supporters this mug with him doing the fist pump on January 6th, and with the things Josh Hawley, show me strong, because the mug is for the liberal tears. And I'm going, this is probably one of the worst moments in the country's history, and you're promoting this to people who you now are going to say, well, we're going to tick off the other half of the country. I don't know if that's helpful.
Well, right. And when you look at the multitude of things that will decide whose agenda, be it the Democratic or the Republican, whose agenda is going to come forth after November, when I go down that list that I've created 8 of them so far. I might add to it or subtract at some point in time. But 2 of them lay on the shoulders of the Republicans as to whether the Democratic side will control, the House and the Senate. And part of that is, how long are they going to relive the election? The Republicans, how long are they going to relive it? How long are they going to tell their people, it was stolen, we got to go out there and get them? It's sort of the fist in the air.
No.
And how long is that going to go on? And how long are they going to stir people up on that side of it versus getting down to, issues?
No, there are no issues. That's the interesting part. I'm not seeing any issues. I'm seeing, there was an ad during the Super Bowl, and I'm sure you probably didn't see it because it was here in Pennsylvania. This Dave McCormick's running for Senate in Pennsylvania, and it's a Go Brandon ad. Where
really?
In the background they got the people cheering "Let's go Brandon," and then he starts ticking off all these problems, all these problems, and kind of insinuating that it's all Joe Biden's fault. Yet these are all problems that he inherited. He has no solutions to those problems other than going, see, look, problems. No solutions, no way of fixing it, just pointing them out.
Right.
With that in the background, when it's not even dog whistle. Everybody now knows what he's saying. I don't know. That's one of those things that I think beneath a senatorial candidate.
Right. Well, I think anytime, I don't care if it was Trump or Biden, yelling out something like that in itself is just okay. That's just find another. Go to the ballot box or knock on the door.
There you go.
Stuff an envelope.
I do got to get your thoughts on this John Durham thing. On Friday, it dropped that evidently, Hillary Clinton's campaign. I guess the argument is they doctored the whole the Russia hoax thing, that they did all this, but there are no charges because evidently all the statute of limitations wore out because this guy didn't seem to act fast enough, which kind of tells me that I don't know. I'm not buying it. I'm curious your thoughts on the Durham thing, though.
Well, he had made this filing on February the 11th, and in there is the allegation about the indictment of Sussman, who was an attorney. I don't know how many attorneys the campaign had for Clinton, but he had been a Clinton attorney who had said that he was either not as involved or had told the government that he wasn't acting in any capacity. And now the Durham report points out that he had been involved with this company who had the servers at the White House supposedly attempted to hack the Trump servers and the White House servers, and they were able to mine information on Trump. Now, it's very possible, and I don't know where all of this, leads to with Sussman, but it's possible he had, involvement with this. The whole key question is going to be, was he directed to do that by the Clinton campaign staff,
And how do you prove that? I mean, is there going to be a
That's
proof
what
chain?
I mean.
And here's the part of this that gets me. What took you so long? Because now what I'm getting, and maybe you know better than I do, but there's no way of going after anyone. This is just an allegation that's going to hang out there. There's going to be no trial, no hearing, no way for it to either be proved or denied. So just the mere, the mere accusation hanging out there is now going to be an indictment.
Oh, correct. I mean, the story is going to have some legs. It's not going to make the difference. It's not going to carry into the next presidential election. But Sussman was an attorney for the Clinton campaign, like I said, probably one of many. And as a result, then the story has the spicy side to it. Now, again, they would have to connect him to a campaign manager or something, directly. It doesn't, according to the Trump side, it will absolve them of everything. Well, it doesn't. There's still Paul Manafort, who, was one of the most politically dumb people on planet Earth to do what he did when it came to meetings with people involved with the Russian, scenarios. So on the other side, you've got Sussman, who, again, could also be a very unbright person who, said, hey, to a computer company, can you, do you have any details you can give me? And that's probably where all of this will end.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing, and this is where the narrative matters, because it's already being spun to me that all the Russian stuff is a hoax. That Russia is as clear as the driven snow. They're as clean as a baby, clean as a baby's bottom. There's nothing there. It's all made up. It was all the Clinton campaign, and going to take something like this and wash all of the propagandizing done by the Russian bot farms and all of those, just going to kind of wipe it away. I believe that and this is where some of the information is that Putin and the Russians did, in fact, move forward on a massive disinformation campaign using Twitter and mostly Facebook to highlight the fissures that we have in this country. They created bot people. They did all kinds of things to push fake, kind of Facebook groups and kind of organizing. They did this. That there's record of that. This for me is for the other side to go, no, it's all fake. This is all done by the Clinton campaign to make us look bad. That's kind of how I see what's going on.
Well, yes, and I mean, you're not far off on this at all. I mean, that's exactly it. And what you've got here, look at the headline. It's a special counsel. It's not just John Doe or a podcast person. Special counsel, John Durham, headline, alleges Clinton campaign lawyer used data to raise suspicions about Trump. And then when you read the accusation, and Durham has vague technical language in a court filing when you read it. All right? But that's been seized upon to say, oh, this is it. There's where it all was. That's who did it all. Again, let's say that the attorney did try to get data, on Trump or move data or whatever. That's possible. It doesn't erase what Manafort and the people connected with him did.
Excellent point.
But the headline is going to be utilized.
Yeah, but here,
no question about it.
The other part is it's interesting timing for me because you had that happen on Friday. Today we find out that Mazars USA, Trump's accounting firm, is basically backing away from all of his accounting statements, basically saying that we don't buy any of it, that we reported what we were told, and we don't stand by any of this stuff, which is kind of throwing Trump under the bus in a big way.
Right. Look, here's an accounting firm, a long-time accounting firm, and they're telling the Trump organization just this week that, hey, by the way, don't rely on a decade worth of our financial statements, okay? And by the way, we're not going to be your accountants any longer. We've got a conflict of interest. And I'm looking at that going, wow,
Yeah, you got a conflict of interest. You're trying to stay out of jail.
Stay out of jail, and then they're just saying, they're almost saying they had nothing to do with it. Don't rely on anything we did because we're not relying on it.
Yeah, no, they said in the article that look, we only did what we were given information and what we were told.
On. And That's why when you do your taxes and you sign it, your accountant says, I am filing this based on the information given to me by my client.
Yep.
If I give false information, they're not going to get my accountant. They're going to come get me.
No, and my accountant reminds me of that.
Right, exactly.
Because the last thing I want to do is have any tussles with the IRS whatsoever. But as always, Bob, I appreciate the time. Great stuff.
Thank you.
I wish you the best in your travels back. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney. And by the way, happy Valentine's Day if you, for that as well. Had to throw it in. And happy Valentine's Day to everyone. I hope someone got chocolate or flowers. I saw this thing the other day, and I wish someone would tell me that it's true or it's not true. It was like 60. The poll said that like 65% of men like getting flowers, and I'm like, no, I can't imagine there being any men who are like, oh yes, I want to have flowers sent to me. It just seems like from a male standpoint, not something that men would want. But I could be wrong. But 65% seems like an awful lot, because every guy I've asked, they all looked at me like I had a third head. So I'm curious if you're a guy and you want flowers, tell me why, because I'm really curious. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Some good news for those of us who grew up in the baby boomer era and just after. I was a Gen Xer. For those of us who grew up in the 80s, Back to the Future was a big franchise movie hit for a lot of folks. I liked it. The car in there, the DeLorean, everybody wanted one, as I remember. Evidently, the DeLorean is coming back. Because you may remember the story of the DeLoreans? They were only in production for a couple of years. And 85 through like 90, 95, somewhere in there. John DeLorean, the guy who was the head of the company, you remember the FBI. I think it was the FBI almost tried to get him on like cocaine racketeering by filling his cars with cocaine, and because he was going bankrupt, and they basically he got off because it was entrapment. But I guess he did try. Evidently, DeLorean Motor Company is still in business. They have nothing to do with John DeLorean. But if you watch the Super Bowl commercials, there was a teaser that went out. I didn't know why until I saw the news report today. They're going to be coming out with a new electric vehicle. You might be able to get the Back to the Future car in an electric version. And you won't even have to try and hook up to a telephone pole or hit the right speed with the hook or any of that other stuff. You can just have a regular plug it into the wall kind of new electric vehicle. What they're doing is their headquarters is going to be in San Antonio, Texas. They're in the process of putting the manufacturing kind of part together. They're going to be dealing with Texas A&M. They're going to be dealing with the University of Texas, Trinity University, and Texas State University, all in the San Antonio area, to get the talent that they're going to need to put this together. They've got investors coming in. I'm sure there's some government money probably coming into this. And evidently, San Antonio is kind of a hub for vehicle manufacturers. They've got Toyota, Tesla, and Navistar. So there's already some knowledge base there. So I'm interested to see how that works. And this is an exciting time because manufacturing is coming back to the country. Building stuff is now kind of going to be in. It's like my son. He's looking forward to the future. He's a teenager. He's looking forward to college or what's next, and he wants to get into engineering. And the part of it of building stuff that's so exciting to him. I'm happy that as a country we're moving in that direction. All great stuff. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Lots to get to this week, lots to talk about. Make sure you tune in each and every night right here at thericksmithshow.com or check your local radio listings. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people